living with COPD, Lisa Schmidt, U.S. Public Affairs and Patient Advocacy Lead for Respiratory at Sanofi, with over 15 years of advocacy experience. Lisa drives impactful change for individuals living with chronic conditions. She currently leads patient advocacy initiatives focused on asthma and COPD. Joining her is Mary Ruth Bremer, Director of Patient Advocacy, U.S. and Global Immunology, Respiratory at Regeneron. Mary Ruth brings over 25 years of experience working in the professional medical society and pharmaceutical industries across cardiology, neurology, and respiratory fields. She currently partners with patient advocacy and professional organizations to develop strategic initiatives and programming for patients living with asthma and COPD. Next, we welcome Midge, a COPD advocate and patient. Midge is a retired military wife, bodybuilder, and nurse who has faced the challenges of COPD. She went from being highly active to struggling to breathe on some days. She is one of 6 siblings, 5 of whom have breathing issues. Lastly, we welcome Lonnie, a COPD advocate and care partner, a 21-year veteran of the United States Army. Lonnie is dedicated to supporting the health and well-being of his wife, ensuring her health is monitored and cared for despite personal challenges. We're excited to hear from our amazing speakers. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Thank you, everyone. For all of you that joined today's Black Health Summit Matters and on chronic respiratory diseases, as well as joining us for this particular session on chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD. COPD is diagnosed as either chronic bronchitis or emphysema, and it is a chronic and progressive condition, meaning it worsens over time, causing permanent lung damage. It is debilitating, and it impacts people both physically and mentally as well. Physically, the symptoms also include breathlessness, excessive mucus, chronic cough, chest tightness, causing a real decrease in the lung function or ability to breathe, which then obviously increases fatigue and exhaustion levels. Over time, patients have reported feeling embarrassed sometimes when they're out in public and they're excessively coughing or having a difficult time breathing. And so sometimes they will start to limit how often they go out in public. And then over time, as COPD can continue to worsen, patients will even start to notice that their everyday activities like cooking a meal, getting dressed, going and getting mail from their mailbox can become more and more difficult, which ultimately starts to impact them mentally and can cause a lot of anxiety and depression as well. So, people living with COPD often have a vicious cycle of disturbed sleep and anxiety that can not only affect the person with COPD, but also their loved ones, their caregivers, their spouses. But today is not about that. Today's conversation is about understanding COPD from a human element and understanding and hearing the challenges of this chronic condition, but also the personal experiences from someone like Midge and Lonnie, as well as their loved ones, about navigating their everyday life. It's about understanding the empathy and support and this collective effort to bring visibility of their stories to all of you today. And we hope by sharing these experiences, we aim to build bridges of understanding and compassion, encouraging a supportive community that also recognizes the depth of the impact of COPD can have on a person's life and bring them hope. So with that, I will now pass it over to my colleague and friend Lisa to join in on Midge and Lonnie's story. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ruth. As she said, I'm Lisa Schmidt with U.S. Public Affairs and Patient Advocacy at Sanofi in the respiratory space, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you today. This is a huge crowd, and I am especially excited to have 2 special guests with us today. You've already heard, we have Midge and Lonnie. So thank you again for being here with us today, and welcome. So to get started, how about if you share a little bit about yourselves? Just let us know who you are, what you do for fun, maybe a little bit about your family, whose shout out is here with us today in the front row.
Okay. As you've heard, my name is Midge, retired nurse, but I was actually forced into retirement because of COPD. That was one of the problems. But that is a big problem when you're trying to get to the patients, take care of the patients, walking through the hospital. You know, it gets taxing on you. You wonder, why is it I can't breathe? I went through many years of it, of not being able to breathe. And the former bodybuilder, as she said, I did. And it struck me as that Saturday before, I had just won a bench pressing meet. And then that Monday, the bar that you use to put the weights on, it weighs 45 pounds. And I could not get the empty bar from the rack. And everybody in the gym thought I was kidding, but I was not. I had lived with it for quite a while, and the doctors were diagnosing me with asthma. Asthma. It was in the desert, so they also threw on to that allergies. You're allergic to the desert. And you go with that, you think it's okay, and you follow through with that and just live with it for a while. We were the family in the military that moved a lot. So once we moved from there again, the doctors say, it's allergies, it's asthma, but it is not. I watched my mother die of emphysema. I took care of her. And it's not a pretty sight. And it's nothing that you really don't want to experience. And there are 6 total siblings. And all of us after the age of 40, with the exception of one, were onset with asthma. And my mother always said, oh, you're going to push the envelope. That's what she told me. And I guess I did, because I didn't have asthma. I had undiagnosed COPD.
My name's Lonnie Wilson. Obviously, my beautiful wife. We're from Florida. Again, retired military. And there's a truism that goes, join the military and see the world. Very true, very true. We've been places and done things that we can only dream of would have never happened without the military. We're grateful for that. Seeing my wife with COPD, knowing how active we used to be, we still do things, but on a limited basis and depending upon how her health is on a certain day. We have 3 kids, 7 grandkids, and again, some of our family members are here to join us, and we are so honored.
Great. Well, thank you for that, and thank you guys for making the trek up here today. So maybe we can step back a little bit and just share, and you shared a little bit, but what your life was like before. You gave us a little glimpse. You were really busy. You were very active. So before you started experiencing symptoms, tell us a little bit about what you were doing so they get a sense of how active you were.
The Army thought it to be a good idea to put us in the middle of the desert. So, but I was going to school full time. I had not yet finished my degree, but at full time, I mean 18 to 23 semester hours. That's a lot. I was a full-time worker and a mother of 3. So it was hard, as he would be in the desert 2 weeks out of the month, and then he would come home for a week in the office, and then you're allowed to spend a week with your family. So it was hard. I loved running. I loved the weightlifting. I did. My husband had trained me, and then other people in the gym saw that I was serious, and they too would try and help to train me. But it just got to the point where this is too much. And that Saturday before that, I call it the original attack, if I want to say that. I had won the meet, and all I used was 150 pounds just to win the meet. So it didn't make sense to me to not be able to get the 45-pound bar off of the rack. So I loved life. I loved doing what I'd done. I mean, I was also having fun, learning how to run again. And when I first started, it wasn't much of a run. He would take me for a run, but he was actually walking, and I was trying to run. And I eventually got it. I did. I eventually got it. So I didn't need him to pamper me anymore with that. But the impact was when I couldn't get that empty bar from the rack.
And Midge, maybe if you were you having symptoms before that? Were there things you were experiencing or signs or symptoms before that bar that maybe now looking back make you think it wasn't just immediate that day?
No, it wasn't just immediate that day, but the exhaustion of it all. And at the end of every semester, and I kid you not, I would sleep for 3 days. I'm just gonna drop because this is just a whole lot you're doing here. So I tried to do the best of taking care of my family, taking care of myself, taking care of my husband. It was just hard. I grew into that where I got to the stage of, gosh, I'm so tired all the time. Why am I tired? Why can't I breathe? And that's what actually prompted me to go and see a doctor. But the thing is, when you move from military base to military base, you're not going to see the same doctor every time you go. It may be someone different. So they're going to look at the prior pulmonary function test results and say, oh, yeah, you have asthma. No one went any deeper until we got to home, until he retired and got home. And I was not able to do the things I once done before. It was just hard because I always felt so tired. So that was the worst thing for me.
So it was the exhaustion and then some
The
of the
exhaustion,
breathlessness.
yes.
And that went on for a while. And
Yes.
could you tell us a little bit more about how long it actually took to get your diagnosis? Who diagnosed you and what you were feeling or thinking when you finally got a diagnosis?
I was diagnosed after he retired. I came home a year ahead of him to buy a home back in our hometown. We're from Central Florida, 30 minutes to Disney World, 30 minutes to the beach. Best of both worlds. So it was hard, but my doctor that I have my primary care, he says, has anybody sent you to a pulmonologist yet? No. And she says, I'm going to get you in to see a pulmonologist. And I did. And so far, the doctor at that time was saying also, oh, it's the asthma. Your asthma is just getting a little worse. And as I begin to listen to the doctor, I'm thinking, well, why isn't it changing? What's changing about it? And what was changing was that I was not getting the help that I really needed, or I didn't have the opportunity to get to a pulmonologist to actually be diagnosed. But when I did get to the right pulmonologist, that's when she said, I'm sorry to tell you, but it's not asthma. She said COPD. Now, I took care of my mother, like I said, with emphysema, and I watched her pass away from it. So to me, when you said COPD, it was like, oh no. You know, I panicked inside. I did. Because I watched my mother, and I'm thinking, is that going to be me? Will this stop? No, it's just a progressive, slow thing that happens. And you don't really know it's happening until you're at that moderate to severe stage. That's when I finally figured out that, okay, I don't want to do this. Can it be cured? No, there's no cure for COPD as of yet. There's no cure. But we're hoping and praying that one day there will be. So I was told something by the doctor once. He said, what you do now won't help you, but what you're doing now will help the future. So I try to educate, educate, educate. You have to become proactive. This is your health. So you have to become your own advocate as well. So you have to follow through with what the doctor says, because there was times when I did not. I did not follow through, and I should have.
And so you're clearly a strong advocate, very well
Yes.
educated. Early on after that diagnosis, which it sounds like it took you 5 years to even
Yes,
get
approximately,
diagnosed.
yes.
How did you get information on COPD? How did you educate yourself? What could you share with us? Like, how did you learn what COPD was beyond just your doctor giving the diagnosis?
Being a retired nurse, being a retired nurse, I had a leg up on it. So I knew a little about it. But then I started educating myself by going online, and I would see what this meant and what that meant. And that's when I realized that, oh, this is not good. I also found out that there are some sites out there you wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. So there's a lot of misinformation that is out there. And you think you're reading right information and you're actually not. So I was truly blessed because the doctor that I worked for, she was telling me, let's go into here, go into that area. So I started out looking into it with the American Lung Association, which I'm still to this day an advocate, patient advocate for it. And I think this is wonderful what you all are doing today, the Black Health Matters. It does, because you all know a lot of our community don't trust doctors. So you won't go. And then when you finally end up having to go, 9 times out of 10, it's in an ambulance to the emergency room. So that's where you're going to get your right information when you go to see your doctor. And it is okay to switch doctors if you feel you're not being heard. And I felt that I was not being heard.
Yeah. No, thank you for that and for sharing that. Can you, just for the audience, just to understand a little bit more about your day-to-day, give some specific examples of how COPD is impacting your daily activities, either physically and or emotionally?
Yes, it impacts me more physically now because they give you oxygen. They will assign oxygen to you, but you have this large oxygen concentrator that you're tethered to. So how can I go to the grocery store and do my shopping if I'm tethered to this 100-foot wire, hose? So that impacted me very much. And as a licensed and ordained minister, no longer can be able to speak. So I couldn't go shopping. I couldn't go with the grandkids. We want to go to Disney. No, Nana can't go to Disney. That wouldn't be a great place for me to be. Well, as it may be for you all, it's not a great place for me because the weather changes, and as the weather changes, your lung changes with it, and you can't breathe. And being in Central Florida, where we got over 100 degrees this summer, I couldn't go out in the heat. And when the doctor prescribes oxygen for you, like I said, you get that large concentrator. I shove it off in a room and close the door, because if you don't, you're going to be just sweating by morning. So as you are sweating, you're thinking, what's wrong? And you're thinking so many other things, but it's not that. So I had to come to the realization that I got to fight for a travel oxygen. I need it. And the insurance companies, and I have great insurance, but they keep saying, oh, we've given you oxygen. You haven't given me oxygen so that I can leave my home. And that's exhausting as it is in itself, because you want to be able to do things with the family. You want to go to the grocery store. You want to do things for yourself. But
You even want to clean the house, right?
may even want to clean the house. And no, I'm serious. My husband has stepped in. He stepped in a whole lot.
Yeah, maybe
after he
actually,
retired.
why don't we let Lonnie? Why don't we, Lonnie, if you want to share a little
Well,
bit with us about what your experience has been like?
My experience, initially looking back at it now, because COPD is such a gradual disease, you don't know, you may not know that you have it, or you may not know that something's even wrong until, like Lisa said, it was maybe 4 or 5 years because I just noticed that there's things that she could do no longer. We'd go for walks and she would be exhausted after the second block, not the second mile. Sometimes just cooking around the house, especially holidays, uh, it would just wipe her out completely. And just over time, we say, okay, there's something that's wrong. And when she got diagnosed with COPD, like my wife had stated earlier, make sure you find the right person, right doctor for you, because we ended up firing 2 pulmonologists that we were just patients, just numbers, and just try this, try that, until we found the right one. So now my role has stepped up immensely. I do most of the cleaning. I do about half of the cooking, shopping, and and ladies, I've heard all the jokes. I wish my husband had. I wish I had COPD so my husband can do the cleaning and do the cooking. But it's a labor of love because, like I said, during the military, she is the glue that kept our family together while I was gone. So I have nothing but admiration and respect for her. And again, it's a labor of love for me.
Thank you. He's a keeper. He's a keeper.
Yeah, he's a keeper. We've been married 43 and a half years.
So Midge, just if could you tell us a little bit, and you kind of did at the beginning, how you're managing day to day, but really with an emphasis on when you're having a difficult day, when you know you're essentially having a flare up or an exacerbation, and you need to step it up. It sounds like the first one might have been when you're like, I cannot lift this bar, but like, could you explain that a little bit more to
I know when
folks?
it's going to be a bad day when I wake up and it's like, oh, I have oxygen on. I take it off and I get up and walk to the kitchen. That's a challenge. I know it's going to be a bad day because you can't go from your bed to the kitchen. Come on. You know what your day is going to be like. So you try to keep oxygen on yourself. You try to go back under oxygen, and hopefully you'll get some relief. But that's what I feel like. I can't walk. I can't do as much. I just have trouble. He bought me a shower chair just to sit in the shower and bathe myself, and that helped a lot. Little things that you have to adjust to so that it will get you through the day. And that's how I feel. You?
Yeah, and Lonnie, what like how on those days, like what are things you're looking out for?
On those days, again, first we always pray and thank God for waking us that day. And since I've been married so long, I know her and she knows me. So I can just tell if it's going to be a day where I need to hang around the bedroom more, hang around the house more, not go anywhere. If I go to the store, go and come straight back. Um, my thing has been to just, help her in any way possible. Uh, when she cooks a lot, she has these crock pots that she puts stuff in, and then go back and lay down to in the bedroom. Uh, I had to when she was diagnosed with COPD. I had heard of COPD. I didn't know that there was not a cure for it. There will be. I'm hopeful about that. But I had to educate myself. I had to educate myself on okay, what's COPD? Is there a treatment? What can I do in case there's extra care that she may need? Again, went to some sites, not so reputable, and other sites, American Lung Association, Black Health Matters, that has very good information about caregivers. Uh, when she was first diagnosed with COPD, if you would ask me what a caregiver was, I would have said it's a nurse or a doctor. someone that gives care, but I didn't know that I would fill that role as a caregiver. Uh, and for caregivers, I would also say you have to take care of you. I can't take care of her if I don't take care of me. So there's little things I do, go to the gym or go play pickleball. But even with that, I'm tethered to my phone, so I have to look. Did she text me? Is she having an aspiration? Has she tried to call? And so, I'm doing things, but I'm also checking the phone. So, like she's tethered to her oxygen sometimes, I'm tethered to her, but lovingly so.
He fills a great big gap. He does. He steps in. And he had to buy me a tall kitchen chair. He bought me a tall kitchen chair or a stool. And this is, if I'm trying to cook something, yes, there will be crock pots going off. But I also had to sit in this chair to complete cooking because I could not stand long enough to do it. So I would have to take what's available to me and use it.
So you've talked a little bit about this, but I think it's really important. And having a role in patient advocacy, I want to come back to it. Living with COPD requires you to be able to navigate the healthcare system. And you've shared some challenges, but do you want to give a specific example of one challenge and how you advocated for yourself?
The one challenge that I faced, like I've told you, was that having portable oxygen to take with you. And you really don't want the tanks because then you're dragging it behind you. So, and you can't fly with the tank. So I was trying and fighting with my insurance companies, pay for something small, pay for something that I can, travel with. And I ended up having to buy it myself because they say, we've already supplied you oxygen. No, you haven't. But I had to do it myself. And that's when I really felt proud to be able to understand the healthcare system and how it works. And that's something that I know is hard for some of you because you don't have greatest insurance, but if you have some insurance, if you can afford something to go to the doctor, I advise you to do so.
Thank you. Yeah, good advice. Well, we know that COPD impacts millions of people in the US. Even though we know that, do you find that people don't necessarily know what COPD is? And if that's the case, what do you tell them?
If they're asking me, I tell them that COPD is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And it will progressively get worse. There's no getting better. And you have to, again, adjust things to fit your life. And I always tell them to please follow your doctor's advice. But at the same time, if you feel like you're not being heard, it is okay to switch doctors. It is okay to say, this doesn't work. When you're going to see your doctor, write down questions that you have for the doctor. And while you're talking with the doctor, make sure that if the doctor says this big word, you say, excuse me, doc, what does that mean? Ask the doctor. Get a rapport established with your doctor. And make sure that your questions are answered before you leave. Or if you didn't remember some things, that's where the writing down comes into play. And you also can keep a journal of your illness. You put a day down, November 16th, I had an exasperation, I couldn't breathe. How long did it last? What were you doing? All of that is information your doctor can use to help make your life better or extend your life. So that's necessary to do. Get that doctor to hear you. And again, like I say, it is okay to change doctors.
I think that's great advice to make sure that your doctor's listening to you.
Yes.
So I can't believe we're almost out of time. This has gone so fast. But my last question for you both, it'll be for both of you, and Midge, you can start. What gives you hope? What keeps you going on those days when things can get difficult with your COPD?
What gives me hope is that I pray, and I also know and hope that I can move forward. And I want to extend my life as long as I can. And I want to educate not just me, but others. As today, it gives me hope because I have two small grandchildren. All of the others are adults, but we have two small grandchildren, and even one of them name is Hope. And I want to be able to have hope for the future. I pray that I can hang around to see a cure for it. But if I don't, it's going to be all right.
What gives me hope is that, again, being a military family, we don't give up. Yeah, we hit a depression when we found out about COPD, but we didn't linger there. We started climbing back up the hill. And every day we live. We don't just exist, we live. And so, if nothing else, just take this from us: educate and advocate. Educate yourself, advocate for yourself, because you know you better than anyone else. And if there's a problem, if you even think there's a problem, go get it checked out. Because it was 3, 4, 5 years before we even said, okay, we need to get something checked out.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing
for
your
having us.
experience and your story with all of us. Let's have a big round of applause. They were amazing.